don't want to tell people HIV is the best thing that happens to me. But in a way, it's like it's the best thing that happened to make me think about me.
That's it.
Like,
So I thought the first thing we could do is talk about a diagnosis. And when were you diagnosed? First
January 2014.
January
The
2014.
first weeks of January, right after New Year's.
Do you remember the date, right?
God, yeah.
I was diagnosed on the 28th of November 1986. So,
Wow, okay.
yeah.
And it's still there.
I remember
Okay.
the date. Yeah.
I don't have the date to the date, it's the week. It's the first week when the clinics opened back after the New Year's.
Okay.
And I went straight in.
Okay. What prompted you to go?
Over the Christmas period, I got super sick. I'd had a bit of a party thing, and to be honest, I thought I just partied a lot over the Christmas period. But obviously I was zero converting. I had a super flu, stuck in bed.
Okay.
And then I went, okay, let's just go check everything out. And then, so it was the first week. I think it's been about the 5th or 6th of January. I don't have exactly the date that you do. And then got tested then, and obviously it came back that was positive.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I first got diagnosed in all those years ago, there was no treatment, you know, none of that at all. And I remember feeling this was the end, you know, this was the end. And I speak to lots of younger gay men who get diagnosed now, and their response is different, and their emotions. What did you feel like when you got your diagnosis?
I was on that cusp. I know I was super lucky, and I am really lucky to have got diagnosed when I did. But I know that had it even been a few years earlier, there wasn't anything like the medication that we're currently on.
I mean, because I sometimes think as an older man who's been diagnosed for a long time, that there's a bit of a disconnect between myself and men of my generation and younger men or men that get diagnosed now. And I think that has a lot to do with treatment, and you know, we move to get to undetectability. You know, I speak to men and they're like, well, I got diagnosed last week, I just want to get to undetectable. And I remember thinking,
Which didn't exist.
right, exactly, I just wanted to get to the next week and not get ill and not die. Did you, when you were diagnosed, was that kind of your motivation? Was like, I just need to get through this and get meds? Or
So I didn't really know anything about it either. So I didn't know
Okay.
about undetectable status. I didn't know much about HIV at all when I contracted it. But it obviously spurred on that kind of learning thing. So then I did a lot of research, and straight away that's the first thing I wanted to do. With it being 2014, which is just 4 years from now, it was that cusp where you wouldn't be given medication automatically.
Right.
You wouldn't be given the option to get to undetectable. You were basically checked your CD4 count. You were like, okay, you're a fit, healthy male. You won't need medication for 2 years. And I automatically, out of common sense, I'm like, okay, I'm a young gay guy living in London, living in the world that we do. I go out, I party, I have fun. I am now a potential risk of passing on HIV.
So you knew that?
I had to fight to get medication. So
Right.
I had to fight to get put on it straight away, because they were like, you don't need it. And I'm like, honestly, I know myself, not out of any maliciousness or not out of harm, but I know that if I'm not on medication and I'm not undetectable as soon as possible, then there's much more risk of me transmitting and more cases of HIV and other people having to be put on HIV medication than if you gave me medication and got me undetectable. But I couldn't imagine having a transmissible viral load for 2 years after just being diagnosed in the world that I am and was living in.
I mean, I probably had 20 odd years of being infectious and feeling infectious, and all the lumber and the baggage that carries for me as an individual, but also the way that I'm viewed in the world. I think what's really interesting about your story, right, is that in that 2-3 year period of being diagnosed and going, okay, I'm infectious, I need to do something, and I'm this, to, right, I'm undetectable. Has that shifted your thinking and your attitudes to your own HIV in that time?
It's the only really way I know my HIV.
Okay.
Mostly through since being diagnosed, within 3 or 4 months I was undetectable, and that has been my journey predominantly throughout that time. So when I think of my HIV, I think of myself as untransmittable in general.
I mean, because I think that's really interesting, right? Because if we're not infectious, if we can't pass HIV on, then what is HIV in our lives, right? And for me, you know, it's really loaded, or it has been really loaded, and it's less so now. But I also speak to other POS men, and I'm sure you have as well, where even if they are undetectable and they know they can't transmit HIV on, there's so much other stuff which goes on in there. How have you managed that, or have you managed it?
In the sense of like emotional baggage?
Yeah, I mean, because lots of people I know, and lots of guys, you know, that we've probably both met, say, yeah, I got diagnosed, got on treatment, and I'm cool.
Yeah.
And I also meet other guys who goes, oh my gosh, we got diagnosed 2 weeks ago in this time of undetectability, and go, it's the worst thing that happened. My life has changed. I don't care that I can't pass it on. Nobody's ever going to love me. Nobody's ever going to want to be with me.
But that's a social construct, isn't it? That's just... That fear it's irrational in a sense, because obviously now I am one of those annoying people that went, it's okay. It doesn't affect me in the sense that, okay, now I'm living with something inside of me. We all live with different things inside of us. And I can medicate it, I can treat it. I'm healthy, I'm functioning, I'm actually more successful than I've been in a long, long time. And it's, in that way, I am okay with it. And then I also have met friends who, in the same kind of time, spent 6 months where they could barely leave their house.
Yeah.
Where they wouldn't be able to socialise with friends that they had before. And this isn't the same people who have the same medication I have. And it's just how they've learned to think of HIV, I guess, before they've got it. That then, in a way, they think they're lesser. And I kind of never did. But maybe I just shut that stuff off sometimes.
Maybe.
I'm like, because it can come out in other ways. Sometimes I wonder if some of my behaviours are triggered by being HIV positive, and maybe that the effect of my diagnosis comes out in other ways, because I don't feel sad about it. I don't get depressed. I'm not like, I don't feel infectious or that there's a disease or an illness living inside me. But sometimes I'm like, ooh, am I doing some of these things that I'm doing as kind of acting out? Am I acting out?
I mean, I sometimes ask myself the question, especially if before I got on medication, I'd always go, oh my God, is it that or is it the HIV?
Yeah.
I'm always like, is it that or is it the HIV? And invariably, over time, now it's like, am I just getting old? Or is it the HIV? You know what I mean? That dodgy leg. No, you're just old.
Am I just making excuses?
Yeah, well, there is that as well, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to talk about as well, though, 'cause I mean, you briefly touched on it, was around undetectability and adherence and all the rest of that. And, you know, there's a lot of pressure put on us as POS men, you know, especially now to, you know, the new thing is to become undetectable, and, you know, that's all you need to focus on. So some of the mental health stuff goes to one side. I sometimes think that the importance that's put on undetectability, which is really important, sometimes is to the detriment of the other things that might go on in our lives. And what do you feel about that pressure on us to be adherent, to be undetectable?
I've been on medication for the majority of 4 years, nearly 5 years. And in that period, of course there's times when I've missed meds. There's been times when I've gone a week without medication. I went on tour at one point and I ran out. And because I was so busy or just irresponsible or careless, I missed 2 or 3 weeks while I was on tour. Didn't take medication, came back, I sorted that out, got more and took it. But there's periods in our life where we won't it's going to be, maybe it'll be alive 30, 40, 50 years. In that time, do you think every day I'm going to take my pills? Most of it, yes. But there may be times when my adherence isn't the same. And then that brings up the mental health thing there. Like, oh, I'm completely comfortable as an undetectable person, I can't pass it on. But now with shifting all the stigma there, if I miss a couple of my meds, then there's this almost like, do I start to hate myself? Does self-hate come out? Or all these emotions that would have come out had I been a positive person in a non-undetectable world? Or I don't know how to deal with that completely. So, because we're all saying undetectable is okay. But HIV is okay, detectable or not.
Yeah.
It's how you deal with it.
Yeah. And I think there's a really powerful in there, and I think there is something that we need to do around enabling people to understand treatment better. So getting positive people who take treatment to understand why adherence is important, and also if you miss your doses and you're on particular medications, they can stay in your body. So missing a day here or missing a day there
isn't the end of the world.
Isn't the end of the world, right? And if you are missing doses for weeks at a time, or 2 weeks at a time, or 3 weeks, then understanding why you are and what support one should get around that. So if you're skipping your meds because you're traveling, what plans can you put in place to make sure you're done? If you're missing your meds because you've got a really dodgy stomach, and I know a few of my mates have stopped taking it. Or another really classic example, you stop taking your meds because it reminds you of your HIV, right? And it's just that constant reminder. Well, maybe you need some mental health support around that. So I think rather than, again, having that new hierarchy, which we always have in gay life. So you've got the hierarchy now of undetectable, PrEP user.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're a PrEP user, you're a really, really good gay. If you can access it and you can afford it. If you're undetectable, you're an even better gay. Do you know what I mean? If you've not got tested and you're undetectable, you're a really bad gay. So what can we do to support and enable those men and those people who haven't done that good work, you know? So I think what you're saying is absolutely right, and there are multitudes of reasons why. I mean, I've missed my meds when I used to party a lot, you know, there were weekends would go by. But fortunately, and I didn't know this till after, the drugs that I were on at the time stayed really, really long in my body. Now, if I'd known that, I wouldn't have beaten myself up so much, I wouldn't have felt so bad about it, and all of these other things, you know, would have informed my adherence to my medication as well.
Thinking back, I've done a lot of work around destigmatization of HIV, about promoting undetectable status, and about PrEP. And so that time where I did go through a period of missing my medication, one of the biggest things to go back and get more meds was being completely embarrassed to even go to the clinic and say, I haven't taken my meds. I haven't taken my meds for like a couple of weeks. I need new meds. But I kept putting it off day by day because I was too anxious and nervous to even go to my doctor and say,
I know,
I've been that bad guy. Stupid. Completely stupid.
The amount of times when I've got 3 pills in a bottle and I've called a clinic, I'm like, look, I feel so terrible that I forgot to repeat my script. And I feel so bad because, like you, I'm not being a good, positive man. You know, and looking after my health. Because
you've been told that that's not good.
Right.
But had you taken had you taken those 3, and then you've not got one for the next day, then you're even more embarrassed. And then we're not one for the next day. You just got to suck up and phone them, haven't you? Really. The biggest impact that had was one of the first times that I ever really felt some stigma or some real negativity about being HIV positive. And it wasn't because I had missed my medication or that I was taking risky behaviours with missing my medication or anything like that. It was actually because I was in a work environment and I had opened up to someone in a private and confidential situation where I told them I'd missed a couple of weeks of medication. And this was the first time I experienced a different kind of stigma between the acceptance of an undetectable person and the stigma of an HIV positive, potentially transmittable viral load person. And the person that I was working with actually removed me from the job. And I was like, oh.
Wow. Yeah.
I was like, oh, this still exists, that this is hardcore stigma. You think that I may be potentially, I may have a potential transmittable viral load, and you sacked me? Are you joking? I was like, this feels 80s. This feels so far-fetched. I had to get in touch with a friend. I couldn't believe that this was happening. Because for the 4 years that I have been positive, I've been on medication. I've been on covers of magazines to promote it and to talk about how good it is and to talk about the fact that we can live a long, healthy life. And I've been so lucky that my whole journey, even through Grindr, through apps, through everything, I never really get any negative kind of feedback from people.
What I kind of want to unpick is, for a lot of men who might be watching this, they're not in the position that we are, and I think in many ways we're privileged, whether or not we think it, but we're also in this bubble of HIV. So all of my work is around HIV. All of my friends predominantly work in health or social care or social justice. My profile, in terms of my public profile, is as a openly black, gay, positive man. And I think that then stops people from throwing stigma at me because they know.
Because there's nothing they can say.
Well, I think they can say it, but they know they're barking up the wrong tree and they'll need a hell of a lot of evidence and stuff to come at me because I can hit back quite strongly. And I think you and I are both in that. And we're both clearly quite upright, forthright guys, right? I mean, anybody who's watching this knows that. But how do we then transfer a bit of that magic, whatever you want to call it, to guys who are at home and they're going, actually, there's no way I'm going to go on. I'm not even going to put it on my Grindr profile. How do we transfer a bit of that zero attitude to them?
It's a bubble. You're totally in a bubble.
We are, right?
And that was one of the first times I'd really felt the other side, because doing this work has always been so easy because of course I'm comfortable with it. There's no problem in it. And I don't even think about why I feel that way. I've just always felt that way. And then having felt someone else's shame projected onto me gave me a feeling of what it would be like if I was completely in a place where I wasn't comfortable with it myself, where I wasn't able to be comfortable in my own body, but also have someone else make me feel that way. And it made me angry and upset, and it made me work harder to do this. Because at first I was like, maybe this guy isn't as right. Maybe I shouldn't be working. I shouldn't be working in this environment because I've got a transmittable viral load. I shouldn't be doing a scene where I'm working very close with someone because. And then I just went, are you joking? Are you joking? No, we are so far past that. It doesn't matter whether you're open about your status. It doesn't matter whether you can put on your public profile on Grindr that you have HIV. It makes no difference. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's acceptable. Within our community, we know so many people who are openly positive and non-openly positive, and it doesn't make a difference to how it affects your life in any way. You don't have to be open about it.
No, absolutely.
To know that you can be comfortable and it doesn't, the no attitude, that can apply to all of us, regardless of whether you shout or scream about it or whether you just want to keep that to yourself. It makes no difference.
I think women of colour, and we are disproportionately affected by HIV. And I think that's why it was really even more important that there are guys like us who come from black, minority and ethnic communities talking about who we are, because we're so often not represented.
It doesn't mean that you have to talk about it.
No, I'm totally with you.
Nothing
Absolutely.
wrong with you not talking about it, but just to see that, of course, no one's alone.
Yeah.
We're not alone.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Yeah. I think a lot of positive men that I've spoken to, once they've managed and they processed it, go, actually, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I was able to reflect on my life. I was able to make new changes. I was able to get rid of rubbish. I went through a really crap period after it, but I came out the other end. Not the same for everybody, but
is
growth
that,
and development, right?
You don't want to tell people HIV is the best thing that happened to me. But in a way, it's like it's the best thing that happened to make me think about me.
That's it.
Like, yeah.